You can't improve upon flesh and blood.
Mm.
So that's why technology will always have a place. It cannot replace anything.
Yeah.
It's a tool. Can't replace a thing. So I think that cultivating real connection again, doing the
Mm.
odd stuff and the hard stuff. And I think that's why people and our kids have a difficult time coping because they don't spend enough time with other human beings and having to wrestle and work through something.
Right.
Um, so that's why in parenting, we purposefully and intentionally, strategically, in measured ways, make our kids deal with human beings.
From the Florida Parent Educators Association, home of the largest homeschool convention in America, this is the Not by the Book podcast. I'm your host, FPEA Chairman Suzanne Nunn, and together we will hear from guests who share their journey to who and where they are today. Each one of them at some point left the expected path, ripped the page out of the book that says you have to do it like this, and made their own way. I hope these conversations inspire you as much as they do me. Today I have a great conversation with Bruce Roberts, campus pastor at Bell Shoals Church in Riverview, Florida. From his first job out of college until now, Bruce has had a heart for kids, youth, and their families. His story helps us realize how much family and relationships really do shape our lives. We talk about faith, family, community, and intentional hospitality. I'm sure you will walk away inspired to embrace opportunities for face-to-face relationships and authentic community with a new and unique perspective. Listen with me now.
I think when I think about my childhood, especially from, I don't know, up to 8 to 10 years old or so,
Mm-hmm.
I just don't, it's hard for me not to see myself on a bicycle. Like we were on our bikes, we were riding around neighborhood and going places we weren't supposed to
Yeah.
go. We we
I can.
lacked a lot of supervision as children,
That
and
sounds exactly like me at that age.
yep.
Seriously.
So we went on these adventures. Now they seemed like we rode our bikes miles and miles. Looking back,
Mm,
we probably weren't going as far as we thought we were,
yeah.
but we were all over the place. So we didn't have a lot, but we created a lot and creating weapons and all kinds of stuff. We're just being Bruce. We were just into some stuff. A lot of
That's
nature. A
great.
lot of nature. Yep.
A lot of outside time. Yep.
Mhm.
So where did you grow up?
So kind of two different spots. I grew up in Kentucky. I grew up
Mm-hmm.
in a small town called Flaherty, Kentucky. I grew up. These places aren't going to mean anything to you.
Yeah.
And I can say Flaherty. I can say Vine Grove. I can say Brandenburg. But they all kind of mesh together.
Yeah.
But I grew up in a kind of a rural area,
Mm-hmm.
um, and yeah, just in the middle of Kentucky, a little bit just outside of Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah.
So. Mhm.
So what was the makeup of your family and what things were, a part of your childhood that you feel like really started the foundation of like who you are today, and what kind of influences from your family and your home were really strong in those younger years?
Yeah, you know, we grew up, in a small town.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, when I said, we grew up in a lot of different places. We were in Vine Grove, Kentucky. That's where I grew up with my, three other siblings.
Yeah.
We were growing up there. Again, just being kids, living
Mm-hmm.
life, not a care in the world. Um, didn't have much, but didn't know that.
Yeah.
We were probably those dirty kids on the block and just didn't know it.
Didn't
We were
care,
just
didn't know.
didn't know it.
Yeah.
Just living our lives. But, I think a huge marker in my life was when I was 8 years old. I lost both of my parents.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my parents were having family problems. We knew that, but at the same time, a lot of our friends were, their homes were dysfunctional, and dysfunctional was kind of normal.
Right.
So I didn't even know to be ashamed of it, or just knew that, there's a lot of dysfunction in our home. Um, but my mom ended up leaving my dad, and they were separated for some time, and then ultimately divorced. And somewhere along the line, my father went to my mother's work, and they had kind of a, you know, and you know, an altercation of sorts. And that's where my dad, he pulled out, a pistol. He took my mom's life, and then he would run um, for a while, and then the police would find him a day later, and he would have, committed suicide, and they found him in the woods. So I lost both
Mm.
my parents in a murder suicide. It was, a lot to process as a kid, a lot to process as a human being, I think.
And yeah, how old were you when this happened?
I was 8.
You were
I was
8.
8, had a
How old were
sister
your
who.
other siblings? Were they older or
Yeah,
younger?
youngest was 6, I was 8, my brother was 11, and my oldest sister was 15.
Mm.
Yep.
That is, for you at 8 years old, that is definitely a marker. I mean, processing that, like you said, as a human being and then as a child. I mean, just both of those places that you had to work through that is devastating. I can't even imagine that. Um from that point, where do you feel like some of the story took you to a place of like settling into who you are? What about those things and those moments do you look back at now and feel like, okay, this is where I landed on my feet a little bit?
Yep. Wow, that's a loaded question. There's a lot of those things that I think tie right back to Vine Grove.
Mm,
If I wanna, use that as a seed of all that. But I think my desire for later on, and maybe I'm fast forwarding too much, but I think I just always wanted to have, a family,
mhm.
just a family, wanted to, be married, wanted to be a husband and a dad, and have some sense of what a family is supposed to look like,
Yeah.
whatever that meant at the time. But I've always been drawn to family life, always been drawn to looking and watching families. I didn't get married until I was 38 years old. I got married later on. It wasn't because I didn't want to be married. It's just, as time went on, I just
Timing,
had
yeah.
didn't yeah, just didn't meet the right one. And I didn't meet Andrea until I was 38, 37, and then we
Mhm.
got married when I was 38. And um yeah, just wanted to be a family guy,
Yeah.
just wanted to be a family guy in that way. And I think a lot of it was, I wouldn't have said it then, but just almost wanted to redeem, restore, work in some way, changing the narrative
Mm.
of what took place when I was a kid. Um, it's
It
by Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. I was just thinking if you go back to that point in time and you kinda work through, you know, where you've landed, I think there's a lot to be seen in that retrospective place. What helped you we have a lot of people who would also be listening to our podcast who've had kids who've dealt with really traumatic situations, um, who've had a lot of, unexpected things enter into their lives. And sometimes it's hard for us to embrace childhood still when we have kids who go through trauma. Is there anything like as a kid that was going through this kind of a crisis, which is just, compounded by the fact that it was multiple layers really of trauma? What helped you? to get through those years? Like, what did you throw yourself into? What did you embrace at that young point that helped you?
Yeah, so I'm thankful. Like, I have my siblings, have my brothers and sisters. We once that happened, we weren't separated, and that was a huge
That's a
thing.
blessing. Yeah.
Yes, for sure, we weren't separated. We stayed in kind of foster care for a little bit before we moved in with our godparents and joined their
Mhm.
family. That's probably a different story altogether,
Mhm.
but I just always had my brothers and sisters, and we were pretty tight. We fought a lot, but we were tight.
All of them
Uh,
do.
that's right. We were tight. I would say that, before, because it was later on in life where my faith in Christ became like everything to me.
Mhm.
That was so much later on in college, but before that could take place, before I could, really hone in those convictions that I have now,
Mhm.
the Lord really gave me a picture of that in my brother. My brother was just great guy, excellent in everything, just done, and we're close to this day, but God really used my brother to keep me out of the ditches.
Yeah.
So I had a standard to kind of look to,
Mm.
uh, to go by. So my brother was really the standard that I wanted to be like him. I copied him and everything.
Yeah.
What I wore, the sports I played, all those kinds of things. I copied him, and the Lord really used that until to keep me from getting too far off the path to where I wouldn't have done some maybe potential irreparable damage to my life. But so I was thankful for my brother during those times.
And you said you played some sports. What kind of things were you interested in? And what did you do that, really kind of fed your passions and your soul?
Yeah, I was. We didn't have play dates back then. We
Yep.
played.
We played. Yep.
Everyone just went outside, and all your neighbors were. It was just didn't matter how old you were. We kind of all played together.
Yeah.
We all played together from the youngest to the oldest, and so we played everything in that respect.
Hmm.
But really, I put my time into basketball. Wanted to play
Yeah.
basketball. Loved it. It's what my brother played. Played football in middle school. Wasn't great at it.
Hmm.
But yeah, basketball was kind of the outlet, if you
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
So found myself playing that a lot.
So when you got to the end of, like, say, your high school years, what were your plans for the future? Where were you thinking, I'm going to graduate high school and this is the next step? What were you thinking?
Well, this is wild because I know the answer to this very clearly.
Hmm.
Ever since the fourth grade, I knew I wanted to be a third grade teacher. So
That's phenomenal.
when you're asking me, like in high school, what was I going to do? I just knew that I was going to be a third grade teacher.
That's
And
fantastic.
so when I graduated from high school, I only applied to one school.
Hmm.
Uh, and so one school I applied to, the one school I got to is Berea College, a small liberal arts school in the Appalachian area of Kentucky,
Hmm.
and I ended up going to school there, and I majored in elementary education, and that's what my bachelor's is in. So that's what I wanted to do.
What happened through your college years that, I know you had some life changes that were pretty significant for you. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like some of the influences and things that came into your life during that time?
Went to college, and it was in so many ways for me a new beginning.
Hmm.
That's how I was treating it. There were a lot of regrets from high school. Honestly, just trying to figure out who Bruce is and was, and what I wanted to be and do. So when I got to college, I knew that none of these people know about angry Bruce when he was in high school, or how Bruce couldn't cope on the basketball court, and
Mm.
Bruce couldn't submit to authority. Like, nobody knew that Bruce, right?
Right.
So I got there, and I just really came with a different mindset. Along the way, I fell into some stereotypical college habits.
Mhm. Yeah.
One, had a difficult time managing my schedule, getting my work done. I like to hang out a lot, stay up
Yeah.
late, and run my mouth. Some things have not changed. Then later on, fell into some other habits of
Mm.
just wanting to, party a little bit, do some things, but it was along that windy road that the Lord kind of put some people in my life. I moved into a study intensive dorm,
Oh.
which I had no business being in. This was a dorm that was set up for people who were actually responsible. So, and were trusted, and so there was, the supervision was a little bit more lax, and I was a
Mm.
guy up there who was taking full advantage of the lack of supervision, and um, but I did meet some friends up there who were very intentional about
Yeah.
sharing Christ with me, and befriending me and loving me, and despite all of my warts, just were inviting me to different things, and it was through those relationships that I found myself at a meeting one night, and hearing the gospel
Mhm.
being preached, and again, it penetrated my heart, and I knew that I had decisions to make, and it was just a few days later after that, after, I would say now, counting the cost, I
Mm.
gave my life to Christ, put my faith in Him, and that's when, the full circle kind of stuff started really becoming clearer,
Yeah.
and just saw God's hand after that in everything,
Mm.
just bringing me up to that point, and nothing's changed at this point in my life. You know, we started with, my story when I was 8 years old, and I think people have a tendency to, feel sorry for people,
Mhm.
and obviously I would not have said that that's a good thing. Not glad it happened, but
Right.
I can really see God's hand in His purposes and things.
Mhm.
Even though I don't fully understand it, I can see some glimpses there, and I've lived a pretty charmed life, Suzanne. I really have, and I tell people that all the time. I really lived a charmed life.
That's
Um,
that's an incredible statement though to be able to make when
mm,
when you can put together the things that happened in your life as a child. And really, I mean, I, of course, before we got on this conversation, I've heard your story and know you and your family where you are now. But for somebody to be able to say they have lived a charmed life, like, I think that there's the part of me that has to beg this question. Like, there are people who would have lived through what you and your siblings went through and would have been victims in their lives forever, crippled, victimized. And some people would look at that and say, well, as a result of like the Lord in our life and all of that, back then that got us through. You didn't even have that back then,
yeah,
right? And yet you can look at these things in retrospect and in hindsight and see what you can see now from your perspective as a Christian. But, like, how do you process that when somebody hears you say that, that's maybe not in the same place maturity wise as you, spiritually, or just, as a human being age wise, right? How do you tell them and make that make sense? Right?
yeah, yeah, and I can think of friends who went through far less,
Yeah.
even growing up, and they never recovered.
Mm-hmm.
So I do know this for a fact. I do know that it's not because Bruce, you know, had such a determination and self will
Right.
that I set myself I made decisions or the best decisions to put myself in the position I am in today. I know
Mhm.
that that's not true. I don't know why um, I didn't get derailed as a 9 or 10-year-old. I'm not going to say there were no scars or no,
Yeah.
um, repercussions emotionally or anything like that. But, you know, to be on this side of it and to be protected in some ways, and my
Mhm.
mind and my heart protected in some ways, not to have grown bitter or angry. I would say that there was some anger that
Right.
was unresolved in some ways, but not the type of anger that made me just go off the rails completely. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I see God's grace and again the standard of my brother, uh,
Mhm.
someone I could look up to. I'm grateful for all the people that he's you know put into my life
Yeah.
along the way. You know, so I just think that it's to be on this end of it and for all of it to lead me to a place where I know Jesus.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I trust him. I trust his plan for my life. That I'm on this end of it,
Yeah.
and so the gospel allows you to really. I was going to say reframe, but I'm going to say actually frame reality.
Mm.
It is the lens. It's the lens in which all things must be interpreted.
Yeah.
And when see your life, you understand that in this world, brokenness is part of it.
Yeah.
Um, it's just part of it.
Mm.
So either brokenness has the last say, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like things are just broken and that's it.
Yeah.
Or there's a God who's greater than the brokenness. There's a God who is actually was broken for us,
Mm.
in our place and because of our sin. So I just I just choose to see things through that light, and it helps me to understand that what things are not and never will be as bad as they seem because of where I am now. So
Yeah. And of course where I know you now, and not all of our listeners will know this side of it yet, but you have come from a little boy who had a dysfunctional, troubled home that you weren't even necessarily completely aware of at that point in time, came to the full stark moment of loss for your family, of your parents, and in a tragic way, and grew up clinging to each other as siblings, and working through your life, getting to this point of now we're going to be adults, now this is what it's going to look like. And to meet you and to know you and not know the backstory, what you see is a man who is very intentional about feeding into and pouring into the lives of families, helping parents be good parents, things you didn't necessarily have modeled for you, right? In your
Mhm.
personal home, for sure. But in a beautiful family, in a family that just gives to others, hospitality, love, attention. So I want to hear from you kind of where that started. I know apparently you wanted to be a influence in children's lives from the time you were a
Right.
child,
Yeah.
but where did this start for you? This direction, this intentionality, and to pouring into the families and to children and ministering to those people.
Wow, this I could talk a little while for this, and
Yeah, you go ahead.
I'm just gonna talk, and we can go through that. I remember when I graduated from. Let me just start here, okay? I'm a
Hmm.
pastor now,
Yeah.
but what I didn't realize then is that um, I've I've always been, and God has made me to be a shepherd.
Hmm.
That's just I can't, it's not something that I like had made a decision or, I have a calling and yes, I've decided and I've obeyed that calling, but I'm just saying like just wired in me and God has just put this in me. I'm a shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I took a job. I didn't end up teaching. I went through my student teaching process, and you know, and that's about the time that I became a believer, and I just decided that I didn't want to. I still want to teach.
Mm-hmm.
That's not where um, my impact was going to be. Let a lot of my professors down. Especially being a male and a minority and all those kinds of things. They had high
Yeah.
hopes. They invested in me. They really did. I mean, I really wanted to impact the schools, and I just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be a part of that. And I ended up not going in that direction. So my first job out of college was I went to go work at a treatment facility for like emotionally and behaviorally disturbed boys. Like it was a
Mm-hmm.
boys residential home. So I was essentially an on shift parent, if I could put
Yeah.
it that way.
Yeah. I
You
did. I've been there, done that.
yeah, and honestly, I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. Um, we had a great team, a good cottage. We had 13 boys in there, and um, we just, I could relate to those boys. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And I could understand why they might be upset and angry, but from that moment, I began to function differently in that and invest differently. You know, tucking them into bed. I'd put them
Mm-hmm.
into bed, you know what I mean? I would pray with them. I would, you know, um, I just wanted to be as long as I could. I just wanted to be, attached to their lives in some way. I remember the staff began to call me Brother Love there. They're like, "Oh, here's Brother Love. There's Brother Love." And at first I thought it was, they're making fun of me. And it was, but after that, I just took it as a badge of honor of like, you know what, this is how I'm gonna roll. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So from that standpoint on, I just trying to be a parental figure to these boys. That's what shaped my heart for like how I wanted to be as a parent, as a dad,
Mm-hmm.
like later on. Um, so that I think that was a pivotal moment for me. And
Right.
then as the years went on, I just when the Lord called me into ministry, and I knew that I wanted to go into pastoral ministry, I just knew that this was how um, I was going. I was going to function. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Am I Go back to your original question, so I don't get too far off
No,
off.
you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just was, the original question was when you were getting out of college and everything, what kind of drove you in this direction of intentionally pouring into students and families and ministering to
Mhm.
those needs,
Yeah.
outside of your ideas of teaching.
Right. So I was directly with the kids at that moment. It was
Mm-hmm.
after that through a course of events, as the Lord would have it, um, I connected with somebody with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. So I went
Okay.
on staff with the FCA. So I was still pouring into middle school, high school, and college students.
Yeah.
Loved it. Pursued, just poured in and pursued kids in that way using the vehicle of sports to share the gospel. So I did that
Mm-hmm.
for some time. But it was after that, through that I began to realize, you know what, I don't know. I just feel like I'm dropping into places
Yeah.
over and over. Um, and I wanted to get a better grasp on the Bible that I was opening up in front of these kids. So I did a
Mm-hmm.
discipleship program at a church in Texas as a pastor who would bring in a group of guys. I did that for about a school year, like a 9-10 month
Okay.
commitment, and did ministry within that church. But it was in that time that I knew that I wanted to pastor. I knew that
Okay.
all of this was a culmination of me, that He was calling me to pastor and to shepherd a specific group of people. And that's
Mm.
what I wanted to do. I wanted to, I've had to move around as a pastor, but ultimately every place I've been, I've just always wanted just to be there,
Yeah.
uh, be with the people there. And so I think that, through the course of those things, that I knew that I wanted to pour into a group of people. And it was also through just looking at scripture, looking at the purpose of the home, the purpose of the family,
Mm-hmm.
that it began to turn in terms of like, I can make a lasting impact on these students and these kids. And if I could pour into their primary influencers, their parents.
Right. Right.
And so that's when I think it became, I finished the loop. I guess I
Mm,
would say I completed the loop on it, that it started to really influencing the influencers of the
yeah.
main influencers of the kids. So I think that's when it switched for me, and I wanted to make the parent or the parental figures more integral part of my ministry.
And so you said earlier that you were 38 when you got married. So where in the process of all of these decisions and these experiences did you meet Andrea? How did that come to play?
Yeah, so I found my way doing student and family ministry at a church in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Okay.
So I had started there, left there to go to seminary, and then the Lord brought me back there. And so in my time being there, I would still, because I had a heart for FCA,
Mm-hmm.
I had come out of that. Even though I was on staff at a church, I would still go speak for FCA huddles in different schools,
Okay.
and I had, shown up to Bowling Green Junior High School, and I'd been there many times to speak to that group of kids, and it just so happened this particular day I showed up to speak to the group, that she was a newly hired teacher and coach at the
Mm-hmm.
school. So she was one of the huddle sponsors, and she was standing in the back of the classroom when I was talking to the kids, but I could see her and know that this one is new. She has not been here. I have not seen her before, because if I would have seen her before, I would definitely know that. So it was just through finding out that we had mutual friends, and then she began to come to the church that I was at, and
Yeah.
then the rest is history.
Story.
Yep,
So you guys got married and you do have a couple of beautiful young children.
that's
Tell us
right.
a little bit about starting a family and what, I don't know what her background was like as much as I know a little bit about your story
Mhm.
coming into this. What was her ideas about family and where did you all,
Yeah, we
meet?
were yeah, we were on the same page, with that. There's a little bit, we joke, there's a little bit of an age gap with us.
Mm,
It's a little older. She was, a little younger. We're in different places age-wise, and
yeah.
which, I think for some people might think of, some challenges that might come along with that, but it's not as, Andrea was probably trending up with her maturity, and I
Yeah.
trend down with mine, so we probably meet at a pretty good place.
That's
So,
fair.
but you know, um, I was older, so our dating looked very different, right?
Mhm.
I wasn't just, I was a pastor, and I'm just not trying to just date anybody and everybody,
Right,
so
right.
we had already observed each other's lives in different circles and social settings and different things before there was any romantic interests, even mentioned.
Yeah.
So she knew what I did, and there was a lot of unchangeable things, in my life.
Mhm.
Honestly, the first date we had, as crazy as it sounds, it was like, "Hey, I just made my intentions known." And there were 3 unchangeable things, 1, our age gap, 2, um, she's white and I'm black,
Mhm.
and 3, the calling of my life, I'm going to be a pastor.
Yeah.
Those are all unchangeable things. I can't so if those are gonna so if any of those 3 were gonna be a deal breaker, those are unchangeable, like, moving forward, and they
Mhm.
weren't. They weren't, deal breakers, so we, um, moved forward, so we're not trying, we were open to having a family as quickly as possible.
Right.
So, and we had one as quickly as
Quickly as
possible,
possible.
as it so happens.
And
So our first one was born, Riley,
mhm, yeah.
was born, and then our daughter, and then, just, 15 months later, we had Roman. Um,
And a
so,
sweet family. I think one of the things I love about your family is you do have a ministry So with that, I'm just going to, in real basic terms, you have a job
Mm-hmm.
and, excuse me, you serve at a church. And of course, when I first met you, it was as a next gen pastor.
That's right.
And you shifted to being a campus pastor now at this point, but still very involved in the ministry of families. So that's part of your job. That's what you do, and it is part of your job. But one of the things that I love about your family, Bruce, is the way that you open up your home. And I want you to talk about that a little bit, because in being a part of opening your home to the community and the way that you encourage and build community that way is huge. And I think we've lost the ability sometimes in our lives to stop and see how important that is.
Yeah.
So I really want you to talk about that for a few minutes.
Yeah. So, one, I will just concede I'm social. I'm a social person, but I just have always been a social person, and I enjoy people.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is, just growing up also, I just enjoy a lot of different kinds of people. Even my friends, we were, I had a friend group kind of all the way through elementary school, all the way to high school. There's 4 of us, me and 3 other guys, and we were all quite different.
Yeah.
In a lot, but we were just the best of friends. You know what I mean? We were just the best of friends. Some were athletes, some were not.
Right.
Guy who was in band, and one guy was Filipino, and a couple of us played sports. One didn't play any sport. Like it wasn't athleticism, it wasn't academics, it wasn't. So I've just always enjoyed all kinds of people, and so I like being with people. I think that it's just being a shepherd, and God's calling on my life. It just pours gasoline on it.
Yeah.
I just drawn to people. I think that's how ministry is. It's people to people. I don't know how to do it any differently. I think the home is one of the most underutilized resources that we have. People invest a lot of money in their houses and their homes, and we're not there.
Yeah.
If I could say it like that, we're not even there,
Yeah.
So we see our home as a tool. It is a tool. Especially now that I'm a campus pastor, I'm preaching every week. So I'm in front of people every week in that way. So that's one thing that has changed. So I do have an ability to impact people through the preached word. And I'm not trying to downplay the preaching of the word. I think sitting up is essential and necessary. But I think that the marker is always going to be life on life. That's going to be the driver. And I think that's what discipleship is. That's what makes, ultimately, it's going to make me effective in ministry, and allows my words to matter a little bit more if people feel like they know me when I'm preaching to them. And I think that's the advantage of being a pastor, being a shepherd, and being in one place. That's the advantage.
Yeah.
So because you get to share not only the gospel, right, but your very life. That's what Paul said. I get to share my life with you. So I've just found that I've been able to move the needle a lot more relationally, ministerially, when it comes to impacting people's lives from my address over the church address over the years.
Yeah. And sometimes, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I understand it is that often you have people in your home more nights than not, right? And your kids might sometimes be like, well, why don't we have people in our house tonight? Right? So when I'm saying this and the things that I've observed and seen, it's like, I think the people listening may not understand. I'm not talking about with you and your family where, 3 or 4 times a year you have people come over and get together, right?
Yeah.
This is a real intentional thing for you.
It's a thing.
And I think also there's probably been times where You didn't have intention, but God just like threw it at you too, right? Here's somebody that needs a place to have dinner tonight. Invite them in,
That's
right? So,
it sounds like you might be talking to Andrea a little bit. She's
we
she
hear stories.
there's been a few surprises for her before, and I think one of her favorite ones is that we actually had somebody who was selling us something. He came knocking on our door. He
Yeah,
was selling something, and I was, if anyone comes to the door like that, I deal with them so Andrew doesn't have to deal with them. So I
right.
deal with them, and but I'm trying to grill in the back and then run to the front door. But man, I've got meat on the grill. I was like, man, we either got to speed this up but I don't want to be rude either. I'm just like, and he's like, man, it smells good. Whatever you're cooking smells good. And I was just like, well, why don't you come on in and eat with us? And he did. And he did. He stayed and then
Had
so he got
to.
to share a meal with us. But it's not I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I just
Oh,
don't
I know.
know.
Yeah,
I just don't know I don't know how else to do it.
yeah.
I really don't.
I think that
And
that's just. I think that that's so funny to me because not funny, haha, but funny, unique, right? I mean, people just have lost some of the element of just welcoming in your neighbor. I mean, how many people do you know that don't even know their neighbors, right? Next door, barely say hello to one another, don't know their last names. Like, there's so many things that we see in our society and our culture today that separate us more and more when it should be bringing us closer together, right? But we're more and more separated in our just intentionality to meet people and allow people in to those spaces. I believe that those things help to address the feelings that people have that really hinder them in their lives today, feelings of loneliness, feelings of anxiety or stress or depression. I think that when you have connection with people, like you say, life on life, right?
Mhm.
That automatically naturally helps those things. It's an intentional thing that can happen by going to a counselor or going to group sessions or doing whatever,
Mhm.
or you can have connection with people. And I think that those things can be helped and addressed. And I think that when I hear your stories and when I talk to you and your family and I hear these things, that's what I'm thinking about. Like there's an unspoken ministering to people that is happening that every single person needs. Christian,
Right.
non-Christian, whatever it is, right? These are people that need to have connection and need to have things that are addressing those ills, loneliness, depression, anxiety, stress, all of the things that so many people deal with, right, in our society.
That's right.
And that's why I admire it so much. And I think that to me, even watching sometimes or hearing stories like that, it challenges me as the person of saying, when was the last time I had somebody in my home? When was the
Mhm.
last time that I stood outside and talked to my neighbors? When was the last time that I did those things, right? How can I implement that? So I don't know. Do you have ways, like how would you suggest to somebody who maybe doesn't have it as naturally as you to start thinking about pouring into lives like that?
Yeah, we I think we probably overthink it at times. We make it a little bit more complicated than it really is.
Mm-hmm.
We know that it's good. Um, we know the value of it, right? Because we know that when we've been received by people, or when we were the new person and somebody engrafted us into their group, and again, I was single for a long time, so I found myself in a lot of people's homes,
Mm-hmm.
watching them at dinner and eating dinner with them, watching them interact with their kids. That's how I learned a lot of stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's how I just ripped off stuff from good parents, and that's why I tweaked some things because there's some things that I saw and I didn't want to do. So I
Yeah.
just was was a recipient of people's hospitality, and so I would just say, one, I think it's helpful just to see people as the people that they are, image bearers.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that we just drive, we try to drive into our kids. Man, these are people who made in the image of God. Okay, one that drives how we treat people and how we see people. So people aren't projects.
Yeah.
So so we don't use people to get to somewhere else. And
Mm.
people are a means to things, right?
Mm.
God's going to use them, and God may use them to use you to influence your life in some way. But ultimately, the end for me is that to know somebody.
Yeah.
Just want to know you. I want you to know me, and maybe along the way we'll become friends or good friends, or at least have shared some time together. You know what I mean? Like it's just not
Right.
so just seeing people as people and not as a project, I think is a very baseline helpful thing, and to just to share a meal. I think
Yeah.
people plus food is just it's not. I don't know. It's just not a.
That's solid.
It's not a. I don't have anything profound to say about it. It's just
Mm-hmm.
connecting with people. I think people would be amazed at how open people are to that.
Yeah.
If you were just say, "Hey, why don't you come over for dinner sometime?" I mean, they were like, "What?" And then
Mm-hmm.
you make it easy for them. You don't have to cook that night. Come on over. No, don't bring anything.
Yeah.
Just come over. I'm just amazed at just oh man, we're so terrible at just receiving grace. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Just enjoying. I'm bad at it too. We always have to bring something as well, but it's just so hard for people just to come over and and be served.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
you know,
But you do it well. So I think that that's amazing. And I wanted to ask you, because we're gonna wrap up here soon. But I wanted to ask you, as you're dealing with some of the things that, that I was just talking about that you see in people now, kids like youth, children who deal with a lot of anxiety and a lot of things, kids, students who deal with loneliness, families who are dealing with not being really connected, right, to each other because they're distracted and all over the place and things like that. What can you offer in the way of like just here and now? Do you have any like books, resources, things like that you would offer to people, or just a word of wisdom that you would offer to people who are struggling and wanting to find that connection, wanting to have a family that's more intentional, have a family that's more connected, have a family that is functionally doing this right and
mm.
not being torn apart by what the world is pouring in, where would you send them to get some resources and some help for that?
Um, well, one I would look at Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a let
Yep.
me just start off with the Sunday school
Yeah.
answer, right off.
It's a good answer.
But what I mean by that is is that I would start with Jesus, meaning this is God in flesh showing us how to be a human.
Yeah.
That's how we know. He
Yep.
was perfect humanity.
Mm.
And how did he function? He chose 12 to be with him, and that's how he did life. And again, also the Bible talks about that he came, you know, at the at the fulfillment of time, or at the perfect time, at the right time.
Mm.
So a lot of times people want to think, oh, think about if Jesus would have come back and when he would have had social media and the internet. Think about the impact and how everyone would have been able to see these miracles and see, like, we would have video streaming of all of these things.
Right, right,
Think
right.
about the impact Jesus could have made, as
Mm.
if that would have made it better,
Mm. Yeah.
as if it would have improved upon his ministry.
Mm.
But his ministry was always people. It's people.
Yeah.
And so I just think that you can't improve upon flesh and blood.
Mm.
So that's why technology will always have a place. It cannot replace anything.
Yeah.
It's a tool. Can't replace a thing. So I think that cultivating real connection again, doing the
Mm.
odd stuff and the hard stuff. And I think that's why people and our kids have a difficult time coping, because they don't spend enough time with other human beings and having to wrestle and work through something.
Right.
So that's why in parenting, we purposefully and intentionally, strategically, in measured ways, make our kids deal with human beings.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You have to be able to.
It's critical. Yeah.
That's right. And so the ability to do that is being lost.
Mm.
The ability to actually be a human being and talk to somebody with your eyeballs. Relationships aren't made to be through your thumbs.
Yeah.
It's two eyes, not two thumbs. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Mm.
It's hearing the inflection, hearing the tone. It's actually all the things that come. If we reduce ourselves to merely words and not the
Yeah.
way the word comes through, and that, I would say that goes back to who Jesus is.
Mm-hmm.
He shows us the manner in which all this comes to play. And I think we're losing that.
Yeah.
So we have to work hard to kind of bring that in. And the more flesh and blood interaction you have, the more interested you are in image bearers. And I think that helps with the community that you need, the people that you need, and ultimately the safety that you need.
Mm.
People are mean, I understand that.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes people being mean to you, you dealing with broken people and your brokenness and sin bumping up against one another is not always trauma. It's just
Right.
life.
Yeah.
It's life. You know what I mean? And we all become better and stronger because of that. And then we begin to see the goal and the meaning of meaningful relationships is that because you're in my life, because I mess up and you don't leave me, because you've seen all parts of me, but you're still there. It just gives a picture of our Heavenly Father. It gives a picture of who God is that, you know what, warts and all, there are human beings around me that I can do life with, and it's safe.
Yeah.
And I think that people don't have safe communities anymore. They don't have people around them. They don't know how to be that person for someone else.
Yeah.
And I think any meaningful relationship is going to require risk, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. And so I think that when you try to run from true relationships, true community, what friendships look like, you're basically saying, I'm never going to work this muscle out.
Mm.
And that's a tough place to be when you're 8. Oh, it's going to be so hard when you're 18.
Mm.
But then when you're 28 and now you've been given this image bearer that God's given you to raise, a son or a daughter.
Yeah.
We're compounding the problem, I feel like. So I don't even know if I answered your question, but I just think that
He did. And I'm going to stop for a second and encourage everybody that just heard the last 3 minutes of what you said to go back and rewind and listen again, because you said so much and there's so much truth. And so much of it is things like, being raised in the church and being a Christian myself. I've heard this hundreds of times, right? In one way or another. But living it, knowing it, and living it are two very different things.
Sure.
And the way that you live out your life is your testimony, right? To people. And that's what they see. Not the words that you say, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the way that you live. And you said so much in those last couple of minutes. So I would encourage everyone to go back and listen, rewind and listen. But, I appreciate so much you sharing your story here and everything. I originally was introduced through, the documentary type video that you had. Is that something that people can access? Can we direct them to a place to go and see your story?
Yes, actually it is. It's still, it lives on our with our church YouTube page. You can still find it on there, called Nothing Wasted.
Nothing Wasted. Okay.
Yeah, and then I think if you go to nothingwasted film.com, it's it's on there as well.
Okay, so nothingwastedfilm.com.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would encourage people to take a minute and just kind of hear your story just from that perspective. It was an amazing story to hear. But I thank you for just sharing today and talking about family and parenting and just community. I think that these are the things that make us who we really are. The people that we live our lives with and the people whose lives we pour into. And, it's encouraging to see people. A lot of the times I think people in our society, people that maybe are not very connected to church,
Mhm.
I think sometimes they feel like pastors and church staff and people can be very distant, right? And very almost untouchable.
Yeah.
Sometimes not really real people dealing with the same things we've dealt with, dealing with life as we've had to deal with it, right? And I just have appreciated so much seeing you live out a very connected and real life in front of the people you serve and with the people you serve. And
Mhm.
that's encouraging. It's encouraging to people who are in church and it encourages us to do it ourselves. But I think it's encouraging to those who aren't, and I would like to say that when you say, look at Jesus, if we're talking to people today who don't have a church home, who don't
Mhm.
understand what we're talking about, I'm going to encourage you to find that, right? To reach out and find that, because this is where you're going to get connected to other people who can show you what this looks like, right? To walk
Yeah.
this out and to live this.
Yeah.
But so what would you share with us as a favorite quote, verse, word of encouragement before we leave that just has helped you through the years that you've been, functionally working with families and parents?
Wow. I may go with something that I say often. When I had my next gen team, they just would get tired of me saying this. But also at the same time, I just we're about to hit the second half of James chapter 1 here
Yeah.
this Sunday too. So I've been looking at not being hearers of the word but doers of the word. But ultimately, it's this, and it's not a quote from me or anything like that. I just know
Mhm.
that doing always comes from being.
Mm,
Doing comes from being,
I
and
love it.
I when I'm struggling and I want to be something else, I want to do different.
Mhm.
New year, I wanna do that. I wanna work hard. I wanna do the reason why it's difficult is because I'm not those things yet.
Mm.
So I have to work at becoming a different person,
Yeah.
changing, and as I become someone different, I will do different things.
Mhm.
It always comes back to character.
Yeah.
So and I believe that that's what God's ultimate goal, he's fashioning his character into us.
Mm.
And I think that that is what happens in the home, and that's why I think those 18 plus or whatever years that your child is in your home,
Yeah.
it's the home where character formation is happening. That's why the home is so important.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and if the internet's gonna do your character formation, then we're really in trouble,
Ugh,
right?
really in trouble. Yes.
Or if peers are doing your character, then we're in trouble, but the home is where it's happening.
Mhm.
So, just encouragement is like, you know what? I wanna be more hospitable. I want to do more things. I wanna have well, seek God in that and just take the first step and just do it. Just invite somebody
Just
over
start doing
and
it.
start doing it. And
Yep.
you'll find yourself enjoying it, liking it,
Mm.
loving it even. And it may be scary and it's okay that you have a pile of clothes on your couch and whatever. And
Yeah.
look,
I
we
needed
don't
that word.
look, like you know what? Because you know why? You know why there's a pile of clothes on your couch? You know why there's dishes in the sink? Because people live there. And I
Yes.
think people understand that people live in that house. They're not going to a museum. So anyway, I
Yeah.
just want to free people up to be a human being.
I love it. I love
Be
it.
free and then you can free other people from these faux fears of like, well, the house is this and house just no. Like
Mm.
show people real life. It's
Yeah.
okay. It's all right. And if nobody wants to be your friend because your laundry is a certain way or toys are all over the floor, guess what? I mean, that'll tell you a lot right there. I think you'll be okay. So anyway,
that's
just
awesome. Those are good words though. Good.
Yep.
Good. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for all that you do and all that you've done. Thanks for listening to the Not by the Book podcast from the Florida Parent Educators Association. To learn more about homeschooling in Florida or to find resources to help you on this amazing journey, visit our website at FPEA.com. If you have any suggestions for future guests, contact me, Suzanne, at notbythebook@fpea.com. Thanks again for listening, and be inspired to live your life not by the book.